All right, welcome to a new episode of Piecing It Together, the podcast where we take a look at a new movie and try to figure out what movies inspired it. And today we are taking a look at A24's The Last Black Man in San Francisco. It's a movie that came out a little earlier this year, just finally hit VOD, and I've been wanting to do an episode on it. Didn't think we'd get a chance to do an episode, so I actually did a written review on the website, which, by the way, if you're not reading my written reviews on the website, you should. You can go to piecingpod.com, and any movie, I kind of have like a challenge with myself. Any movie we don't cover on the show, but I see in the theater, I try to do a written review. So you can find written reviews all over the website. And I did do one for The Last Black Man in San Francisco back when it came out, because I didn't think we'd get around to it. But here we are. We got an episode. Friend of the show, Kris Krainock, had been wanting to do this one for a while as well. And so we finally made it happen. And I think we got it's a long conversation, but we get into a lot of great puzzle pieces about this truly beautiful movie, one of the best movies of the year. And if you don't know what it is, The Last Black Man in San Francisco, it's directed by Joe Talbot, and it's about a guy named Jimmie and his best friend who set out on a kind of journey to reclaim Jimmie's grandfather's house in one of the most gentrified areas of San Francisco. And it goes in very strange and beautiful kind of magical realism directions, and it's a very original movie. Very beautiful, very touching, and we're going to get into it in this conversation. And before we do, I want to remind you to please make sure you are subscribed to Piecing It Together on your podcast app of choice. You can rate and review us on Apple Podcasts, follow us on social media at PiecingPod, and join the Facebook group Popcorn and Puzzle Pieces. All right, let's get into this conversation. All right, we got with us back on the show, Kris Krainock. Kris, how you doing, man?
I'm doing well, man. Thanks for having me back.
Enjoying our little mandate day?
It's been the best mandate I've had in a long time.
It's been a lot of fun, and now we're going to record a podcast episode with rain and thunder, and who knows what's going on.
It's very intimate. We're both bare-chested.
Things are falling through my window. This is going to be interesting. Hopefully things go well. We're talking.
They never do when I'm on the show.
That's true. That's absolutely true. Today we are talking about The Last Black Man in San Francisco, a movie that came out earlier this year and is just now hitting VOD, and a movie that I will admit, when I first walked out of the theater, I wasn't quite sure if I liked it that much, but as I started thinking about it, it started kind of revealing itself to me in many different ways. It just really started to hit me. But I know you loved it fairly immediately.
Yeah, well, I loved it as it was happening, but it was so good as it was actually unfolding in front of me that it became very suspicious. And then I also became really worried, because sometimes a movie, is so great, and then it blows it within the last 5 seconds. And so I was like, how are they going to bring this thing? How are they going to bring it home?
Yeah.
And that's a really, crazy thing to be thinking, but I couldn't help it.
Yeah.
It was so great, though, that I then went back the next day and saw it again, just to make sure that it was as good as I thought it was.
Right.
And it was. It's a great film. We still have a little while left to go this year with new movies coming out, but I think I doubt I'll see a better film. It really touched me and moved me, and it's my favorite film of the year.
That's awesome. Well, why don't we go into some puzzle pieces? I know you've got a few more than I do today, but let's get with your first one.
Okay. The first one might be the most obvious one, and I hope it's not on your list. I don't want to steal from you, but I'm going to have to say Moonlight.
Okay.
And that's the thing, is I don't know. The thing about that movie that movie in relation to this movie is that what I've learned about The Last Black Man in San Francisco is that it's a passion project that's probably lived within these guys making the movie and this director for a long time, long before Moonlight ever came out, and they probably had things chosen and selected. But the reason why I want to mention Moonlight is because I think it might have paved the way for a movie like this. I think it probably had a subliminal influence. I think there's connective tissue creatively that might just be coincidental. I don't think that they watched that movie and said, "Oh, we got to make a movie like that."
Right.
But I think it kind of created an atmosphere that allowed for The Last Black Man in San Francisco to exist. And they're both unique, original films with a very strong voice. But there's some type of connective tissue. I think it's the poetic element about the films.
Sure.
Not only that it's about an African American as the lead, that's like a superficial connection.
Yeah.
But I think it's more about the approach. It's the more poetic, almost Terrence Malick influenced vibe that both of the films have. They don't have traditional structures. They don't have they don't unfold in a very formulaic way. And I think there's just a lot in common with the vision of the directors. I don't know if it's just coincidental or if they saw Moonlight and were so impressed by it they wanted to kind of continue in that new path that Moonlight blazed.
Yeah.
But whatever the influence, it's somehow there. It's like in the ethos of cinema now.
Yeah.
Moonlight was like a meteorite that hit the earth.
Definitely, and I did not have Moonlight on my list, but I think it's a great puzzle piece, and also, just the way that Moonlight used Miami, it really was a real serious like love letter to that city in a lot of ways as well, and so I think there's definitely a connection there as well. With the way that this movie, truly loves San Francisco for what it can be, and the stories that can unfold there.
One of the reasons I loved Last Black Man so much is that it's about so many things. It's really ambitious. And it's about not only the relationship and the characters, and it has all kinds of social and political commentary. It has like all these layers, but it's also really this movie about a city. And I feel like there's a lot of specific nuance that people that have spent a lot of time in San Francisco or live there will understand. And I think the same thing's about Miami. I know San Francisco better than I know Miami.
Yeah.
So I think I picked up on those layers. Yeah, San Francisco is my favorite American city. I've never lived there, but visiting often, it's a great city. And so I felt that real admiration for the city. And there's things in there that only like a San Francisco person would understand. Yeah. But they're so specific that they become universal. And I feel like I was like, they let me in on some of those secrets.
Right.
So no, I think they have that in common as well. Those two movies.
Absolutely. Well, you're allowed to hate San Francisco because you love it so much, right?
Oh, that's true. The strange with Thora Birch cameo.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, okay. Interesting. She was just shitting on it. But the thing is, the movie has a lot of those like kind of poetic lines that, that's a gamble because some of those lines can feel really forced.
Right.
And yet in this movie, it has really, owned it and earned it. And
Absolutely.
I never really felt pulled out of it by some of those more artistic flourishes that, again, it's always a delicate balance. I was like holding my breath throughout this movie.
It owns up to every one of those artistic flourishes.
It earns it. Yeah, exactly. So. It was unabashedly artistic, but it never felt cheap. It never felt, it was just such a sincere movie that it got away with murder in a lot of ways, but the artistry of the film was so abundant that lines like that, they flew.
Yeah.
They could sink in another movie, but you got to love San Francisco. You got to love it in order to hate it. And you can kind of go, okay, yeah, whatever. This is kind of these cheap philosophizing ideas. But this one wasn't that. They had earned that. And that coming from that character, I believed that line.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, for my first puzzle piece, I'm going to go with the one that I thought you were going to bring up there when you said I might have it. But that is Blind Spotting from a couple years ago.
Oh, yeah.
Which, another movie that deals with this region of the country, of the state, of California. And, also, again, like you said, it's kind of superficial to dealing with, black issues and all that stuff. But also, the main thing that I thought, aside from the region, is just the way that the movie kind of builds towards this performance within the movie that almost doesn't seem like it could be real, even within the world of the movie. It almost doesn't seem like, could this be happening? With the rap performance in Blind Spotting, and then the one man play within The Last Black Man in San Francisco, which just seems so. It just seems like, wow, this is happening right now. Yeah. Like these people really all came into this house and are really watching this play. Like, is this happening? But within the world of the movie, it is happening. And same goes for Blind Spotting. I mean, it really all builds to that big central performance.
That's true.
I think it's really interesting, and it kind of speaks to performance, I guess, as a thing that can have just so much power.
Yeah, and that's what's true. I mean, it's funny that's not even on my list, and it's an obvious one that should have been because it's so true. I totally agree. These podcasts are never as interesting when we both agree with each other the entire time. But I'm just gonna be honest. No, it is really interesting, and both of those performances delivered. and they were both explosive. Like I
Mhm.
was kind of like my mouth was agape when I
Yeah.
watched the one man play.
Yes, absolutely.
And it was the culmination of a lot of story threads that I thought was handled really beautifully and uniquely, especially the toxic masculinity
Mhm.
thread that goes through this movie. Yet another layer of The Last Black Man in San Francisco.
Oh,
So
yeah.
both of those movies are really heady. They're intelligent. They're pointed. They're critical of a time and a place and an era and our environment. And so they're both very sharp films and poignant films and timely movies.
Yes.
So there's a lot in there that I think that connect those two projects as well. Another one of those movies that this movie is probably was in development long before they saw Blind Spotting. You know what I mean?
Sure.
But there's just some kind of like, something in the air about them.
Yeah.
These stories are begging to be told, and I think that it's great. What I like about Last Black Man as well is that by making toxic masculinity one of its themes, one of its points, and then you have the character be a little bit more of an artistic, playwright and an
Sure.
actor, it gives you some kind of clarity into that world. The use of the Greek choir theme of the young black guys rapping on the street corner. They're always together in a corner. That's a classic Greek, usage of the choir cliche.
Yeah.
But it's reinvented here in a really unique way, and it gives there's all these like little elements that give it really great context. And I think Last Black Man. Pick an easier title, guys. I'm going to say it the whole podcast. No, I'm just kidding. No, it's a great, and it's a very catching title. It's a great title. But anyway, so I think both movies, Blind Spotting and Last Black Man, there's just like a general ambition about them.
Yeah.
I was actually surprised by Blind Spotting. I hadn't read nothing about it or seen anything about it, so I just went to see it, and I was kind of floored by that one too. I thought it had a lot of balls.
Before we go on to the next puzzle piece, back to the title, I do think it's a great title because it's such like an exaggeration. It's like it's really going to catch a lot of people off guard who don't really know what to expect going into it. I think.
It's like intrinsically poetic.
Yeah.
I wrote a Western movie one time, and I made the tagline of that movie, even a dead man can't outrun himself, which makes no sense at all. It's a stupid tagline that I think in hindsight I hate, but but I was going for something that was, didn't make any logical sense, but had some type of resonance poetically.
Yeah.
And I think about Last Black Man, despite it, of course, having its place within the film itself and being the name of the play, and then the grandfather was the first black man, that whole thing going on. It's a catching title,
Yeah.
and it also gives you a sense of the heightened realism. One of the things you said, like, how could this be happening?
Yeah.
And it's like, the movie is expressionistic in a lot of ways.
Sure.
And yet that's one of the things I was really impressed by, particularly because this is their first feature film.
Yeah.
Which makes me admire them all the more, and I want to know them and pick their brain. And it's that they had such a nuanced balance. That's the thing, is the control for a movie of heightened realism, of expressionistic approach. It's much harder of a balancing act to make those things work and play. Sometimes first films, they want to come onto the scene. So the filmmaker, it's more about the filmmaker than it is the film.
Yeah.
And they want to really make a statement. And then sometimes, like An Angel at My Table, which is not one of my puzzle pieces, but it could be a great film from New Zealand. The filmmaker blends into the story so seamlessly that you don't even know that they're there. And so I feel like Last Black Man is like perfectly in between those things. It's artistic, it has a statement to make, it's creative, it's challenging, it's risky, and yet it never felt like self-servicing the filmmaker. It felt like this was like a real love song that they needed, that there was a passion behind.
Right.
And they just bled into the project, and that all is very visible and palpable.
Sure. Absolutely. Well, what do you got for your next puzzle piece?
Next puzzle piece is going to have to be the Royal Tenenbaums.
Ooh.
Yeah, and what's funny is I think it's just visual. Watching that house made me think of the house in Royal Tenenbaums. It's this dreamy San Francisco, the way that Royal Tenenbaums takes place in a dreamy New York. That New York doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And that San Francisco doesn't exactly exist. The cinematography is so painterly and so beautiful that it helps give you a sense of the city without making it like a documentary.
Right.
The house is a dream to the main character, and therefore the subjective camera is making us feel like it's a dream. And so I think dreamy is the right way to describe it. Whenever I think of Royal Tenenbaums, I think of this dreamy, fantastical New York.
Sure.
Everything is like the 1970s brown and soft and warm, and there's all those color tones that exist within the city but aren't exclusive, to that. So I feel like that's. I think the visuals had a lot of Wes Anderson to it,
Right.
but without again becoming so self-indulgent the way that Wes often does, where it's like so predictable.
Right.
There's when you have Jello from the Dead Kennedys pop up on a Segway in your movie, I don't know what's gonna happen next. And I feel like they did that same thing with their visuals. It was gorgeous. It was beautiful. It was stunning. It had that unique aspect ratio that, I don't know why they did that necessarily, but it worked. Sometimes aspect ratios now are becoming like this thing where people are using them more, openly, and we're getting the 4:3 Instagram filter on Ghost Story and all these, they're kind of using them really uniquely. But yeah, I think just visually, Royal Tenenbaums is very present.
Sure. Yeah, I love that puzzle piece. I hadn't thought of it, but yeah, I mean, that house is just it's so beautiful, and you could see why he'd be so like obsessed with that house. It's just it's an amazing place.
Yeah, and the main character wears the same clothes, just like Chaz. Just like Ben Stiller's always wearing the same clothes. These are another like expressionistic choice.
Yeah.
This is not something. It probably has a rationale. It probably has a reason, but it's not one of those things that's crucial to you understanding the movie.
Yeah.
It's just like heightening the sense of unreality, which then this is again ode to the filmmakers who makes the fact that you can be creative and make and exaggerate reality makes the elements of the movie that are most real resonate even more. That's the brilliant balance that I was so impressed with. It's like you make this very artistic film, and yet all those real deep emotional things that need to hit home on a real level are only underscored by your creative decisions. That's just so hard to do.
Sure. Well, for my next puzzle piece, I'm going to go to another A24 film. And so, this one obviously deals a lot with, gentrification and, these people being forced out of their neighborhoods. They're in San Francisco, and, basically, they're basically homeless, the main people, and, they're just squatting at the house. And, the movie I was thinking of is the Florida Project, which deals with like the whole hidden homeless situation and people who are just getting by somehow and they don't really have anywhere to go, and it's just like this really bleak but true look at what's happening right now, and that's an interesting thing about this movie is that if you weren't paying attention, you might even think, especially because of like their clothes and some of the set design, you might think this is like in the 70s or something like that. But this is a very now story. It's very much about what's happening currently. And they both, I think, share that kind of thing about showing what's happening to to that level of society right now of people who just they don't have any kind of opportunity to find any kind of footing and get onto any kind of next level. They're just kind of getting by the best they can,
Yeah, and I think these filmmakers were in a particularly interesting position because San Francisco has become the most expensive city in the country. It's more expensive than Manhattan. As long as I think that's still the statistic, or that's still and so I feel like it's a great opportunity. This was another movie. This movie felt like the right time, right place.
Yeah.
I kind of know why Plan B kind of scooped it up because not only did the filmmakers exude some type of talent that was just obvious, but they also there was like something to say here.
Yeah.
And it was timely and it was political. And San Francisco is just this perfect way to it's like it's the best metaphor for what's happening all over the country. These people, especially the sense of loss. They had this house.
Yeah.
Now they no longer have it. It was, we don't know the circumstances. We know the dad's hustling, making DVDs and stuff.
Yeah.
But what put him in that situation in the first place? Was he always a person of that type of lack of integrity or integrity or whatever, however you want to interpret it? Or was this something he's doing out of necessity because society turned their back on him?
Yeah.
And then this city is now wonderfully representative of that cultural change, that shift.
Yeah.
We've become, as Americans, we've always been me. But I think that's only been exacerbated as time has gone on. And we've become more and more isolated.
Yeah.
And we're losing our very homes. That's really happening. There are really people on the street, especially with the foreclosure wave that happened a couple of years ago when the housing market crashed. So it's extremely timely and painful in a lot of ways too.
Yeah.
Florida Project is a great film, and again, it's funny. It's worth mentioning that these are A24 films, and there's almost becoming a feeling with an A24 movie, which is dangerous. Although the film we saw recently, The Farewell, didn't have that.
Right.
Overly like A24 vibe. And it was refreshing to see. Because there's nothing worse than like, okay, something's new, and then we're just going to do it until it's old, like immediately.
Right.
Like A24 has been exciting for like, 16 months, and now I'm kind of getting bored.
Right.
So I'm like, oh God, can we just, keep doing different things? But what's nice is that those two films do feel similar, but again, Last Black Man just had some type of unique spark. It didn't really fit into any mold yet.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, there's some elements there, but I think it's such a unique, original movie, even if there are parallels that you can draw between another A24,
That's what's interesting. Wow, pardon me, I can't talk today. Interesting about this show, piecing it together, is that we've discussed, do filmmakers like talking about their influences? And I would say that probably the secure ones like to talk about it.
Yeah.
The insecure ones probably don't. And then there's probably like egomaniacs like Tarantino who released a list of movies you should watch before watching the movie that he made from the movies that he ripped off. And it's like, wow, that's like Inception of ego. It's like that's insane. It's like ego within an ego. It's like, look at all the shit I stole for you to appreciate it. It's like, okay. But that's my interpretation. Some people go nuts over that kind of thing. But I think that that Last Black Man is definitely the result of a lot of powerful influences, but there's a real artist. There's there's a lot of artists involved in this movie, but there's two main artists that have real clarity in their voice.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm excited for their next thing.
It's going to be interesting to see where they go from this. Yeah,
because it's so. We were saying before we started rolling, it's such a personal film. Like, is this all they have to say? I don't think so. My gut is that they have more to say.
I would think so,
but it's a risk.
Yeah.
Would you make something this great out of the gate? It's like Kevin Costner. I hate Kevin Costner. He made Dances with Wolves. It's fucking a masterpiece. It drives me crazy how good it is. But then he made The Postman, so I was like, okay, I can live with that. You suck. You suck again. You made a perfect masterpiece, and now you suck, and there's balance back in the world.
Yeah.
So hopefully these guys don't make their Postman.
Right. Well, what do you got for your next puzzle piece?
I forgot what we were even doing. I was so.
You're seeing red right now.
I'm so mad. I'm so mad about how good. I'm so mad and happy how good. What is Dance with the Wolves is. So speaking of gentrification, because I think that's an important. Again, another onion layer to peel back. It's another huge part of it. I'm gonna have to go Do the Right Thing.
Okay.
Again, this one's a little obvious. I mean, what movie after Do the Right Thing? What movie wasn't influenced by it?
Sure.
That was another movie that's like a meteorite. Like that's back when cinema inspired people going to a coffee shop after the movie and having a debate. That we live in a different time now where that doesn't happen, unfortunately. That's why we need shows like this. But when I think about Do the Right Thing, that's another film that's extremely expressionistic. Hottest day of the year, we're going to shoot stuff against a huge red wall. Yeah. These are like really obvious art school choices, and yet they're so sincere and they're so they're so infused with an idea and a rich passion that they work. And there's that kind of famous little scene where the guy's wearing the Larry Bird jersey and they bump in, and he makes the Nike, or he makes the Jordans. I think it's Jordan. I might be totally off on some special shoe.
I wouldn't know either. So
yeah, I don't remember. I think it's a Jordan.
Yeah,
or something. Some or no, I don't know. But it's this Boston Celtics. The guy's wearing the jersey. I don't know anything about sports, so it's called a jersey, right?
I think so. I've been told.
Okay, they make goals in basketball, right? No, anyway, so and there's that part where he's like, it's all like that little moment is crystallized about gentrification. That these white folks are moving in, kicking the blacks out, and it's sad.
Yeah,
we live in a town where gentrification is rampant.
Mhm.
We had, I mean, back in the day downtown, you can go get a hooker and get stabbed all on Christmas morning.
Right.
And it was a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
And now sneakers have moved in, and a sneaker factory or whatever the fuck's down there is changing it all.
Yeah.
You know, and so yeah, we live in that. It's a little bit different and not nearly as important, but definitely we understand the side effects of it.
Yeah.
And so yeah, To Do the Right Thing is such a great film of power. It changed my young life. It influenced my life. It gave me empathy
Mhm.
as a sheltered, affluent, little white kid that didn't. The film is a pass into these things. It's an empathy builder.
Right.
It opens a door to let you into other cultures and ideas and rocks your world. And the main thing, especially for someone like me who hasn't experienced it in their life, helps build empathy and understanding and is educational in a way.
Yeah.
Not that it's Spike Lee's job to educate me, or not that it's these filmmakers' job to educate me.
Sure.
But the fact that I'm able to take that information and incorporate it into a more empathetic view of the world and of people different than me, I think that's what makes those movies even more important than just being great pieces of art.
I think that's a really good point about this movie because, just admitting that one of the things that I wasn't 100% whether or not I liked about the movie at first is the fact that he's basically squatting in this house, and we've had a lot of squatting in our neighborhood here, and it's just like you always
some
like
subjective criticism.
yeah, and I'm just like do I like this character that's squatting, but
Yeah.
it's like it really brings you into that world and shows you why things like this are
Yeah.
people are forced into these situations.
Yeah, and the thing is, I like how intelligent the leads are.
Yeah.
I like that they themselves are not stereotypes.
Mhm.
I like that the choir is a stereotype to a certain extent, but then that is expanded and excavated.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of tropes in this movie that you can pinpoint, besides very minor, like the buddy type movie. You can always draw some type of parallel, but
Sure.
nothing that is egregious or sloppy or lazy. It's all such a organic, beautiful experience, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the thing is I like movies that, and I mentioned this to you earlier, the movies that follow their own internal logic.
Mhm.
And I have another puzzle piece that kind of leads into that, but I'll let you go first. But
Why
yeah,
don't you go with it if it leads right in there? Since
Okay.
I know you have more than me, so
Okay,
why don't
sure.
you do it?
I was gonna say one of the movies that is on my list is a great film, one of my top 5 of all time, called Paris, Texas.
Okay.
The Wim Wenders film, written by Sam Shepard. A German comes and makes a movie about the American West from a great cowboy playwright, starring Harry Dean Stanton, one of the greatest films ever made, in my humble opinion. And what I like about that film, and what I see as a parallel with Last Black Man, is that there's a central mystery about the main character
Right.
that pulls you through the film. And because you're invested in that mystery, they are allowed to be a little bit more cryptic and a little bit more artistic and a little bit more expressionistic in their approach.
Mm.
When you earn the audience's interest, you can take them on a more exciting ride.
Yeah.
If you're just like doing bottom of the barrel type stuff, then you got to spoon feed them your plot.
Right.
But when I care about this character and I'm intrigued by them, and there's something I don't have all the pieces to the puzzle,
Yeah.
I'm much more likely to go down whatever rabbit hole they want to go down, because I'm invested. And the idea of like, what is the truth of this house? That's the mystery.
Yeah.
What relationship does this guy really have to this house? Is it really his granddad's? Did he really build it?
Are we ever going to find out?
Are we ever get? And that's things we do,
Yeah.
and it's one of those things that in my head I was like, we're probably never going to find out.
Right.
And that's one of those things I would have been fine with leaving ambiguous.
Mhm.
But the way that they wrote the story, it needed to be told, and I think that they did the right decision for their movie.
Right.
And but yeah, no, Paris, Texas opens with a guy walking out of the desert, and he's a mute.
Mm.
And we have no idea how he got there. He's in a suit. He's a white man on the border of Mexico. And we're like, what is this guy? Why can't he talk? Where did he come from? And slowly he gains back his speech, and he meets up with his brother. And only slowly, piece after piece, do we start learning the truth of this man's situation and why he was in the desert and what he was doing there and what he wants and what he's after. And then another great thing about the film, another parallel, is that, not to ruin it for anybody, I guess we're okay with spoilers on this show, right?
Spoilers happen on this show.
So
There's a warning.
Yeah, there's a warning. And the main character of Last Black Man leaves his best friend, leaves the only family he has, really, abandons them in a controversial move to leave abstractly somewhere, right?
Yeah.
He's rowboating away, brilliant, beautiful shot.
Yeah.
But where to? Are you going to Alcatraz? You're gonna go get some saltwater taffy. There's no literal piece that we need. That's not what the story is saying to us.
Yeah.
And then in Paris, Texas, the character makes a decision that is not the decision we would necessarily make. In a super fast nutshell, the main character of Paris, Texas is dating a much younger woman. He's extremely jealous of her. He begins to abuse her. She runs away with their son, and he gets crazy and goes to Mexico and never comes back.
Mm-hmm.
He finally does come back, and he has a young son with this woman that's now being taken care of by their much more stable family, his brother and his wife. And what he basically does is he abducts his own son, willingly. The boy wants to go along, but not smartly. This is a little 7-year-old kid who can't make a decision for himself. So he's like, yeah, I want to go find mommy.
Right.
So he takes him on the road to go find the mom who's working as a sex worker. And Harry Dean Stanton leaves the son with his mother and then abandons them again because he knows that he can't actually make that life work. He knows that they're not destined to be together, but he believes above everything that the son needs to be with his mother. And he lives with the guilt of separating that part of the family unit. And you sit there, and if you think about the film logically, you're like, you took this kid away from a safe home.
Right.
A mother, a father that loves them, that took him in as their own, and you did that to go bring it to a young woman who's barely making it on her own as a sex worker. And so the movie almost is heightened to a fairy tale.
Right.
It's not about reality. Paris, Texas is almost like a cautionary tale about behavior and about family and about loss and about sacrifice. And those are really big themes that are better executed in the framework of almost like a fairy tale.
Right.
And there's a part of Last Black Man that's almost like a fairy tale. It doesn't really matter where the main character's rowing to.
Yeah.
That he just has to find his own way.
Yeah.
And all the shackles of reality no longer matter in a story of those larger, more profound themes. And so I think they're very similar, actually. And I wouldn't be surprised if they were directly influenced.
Yeah.
I think they're certainly indirectly influenced, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's one of their favorite movies.
I feel like that fairy tale or like magical realism or whatever, like feeling is something that's going to permeate most of our puzzle pieces. It seems like, it's like just such a major thing about what the movie is, like to its DNA or whatever.
Yeah. It's funny. What's harder about Paris, Texas, though, is that it plays it straight. It plays it straighter than Last Black Man. If you look at it at face value, there's nothing unrealistic about. Except, I mean, again, I guess the only thing is that the guy walks out of the desert, but that's still possible.
Sure.
He walks out of the desert like a biblical figure, but that's probably the only more surrealistic edge to it. And even that is played super straight.
Yeah.
The cinematography is like this beautiful, picturesque, but bare bones, straightforward type stuff.
Yeah.
So what's interesting about Paris, Texas and why it's particularly challenging is that it's so grounded.
Yeah.
It's more grounded than Last Black Man, to where that has more of these creative flourishes that kind of help you accept an ending like it has.
Yeah.
To where the ending of Paris, Texas is so challenging and so like seemingly realistic that it really works on you. And you have to stand back from it and go, this is a fable.
Yeah.
This is not a realistic film. This is a fable. And you have to find that. To where I think Last Black Man does a good job of giving you those breadcrumbs.
Yeah.
They're just different films. Neither of them do it wrong or right. It's just whatever's appropriate for that particular film. And I think there's definitely more breadcrumbs with Last Black Man.
I'd be really interested to hear if Joe Talbot was a fan of that.
Yeah.
It seems like he probably would be.
If he hasn't seen it or he isn't a fan, have him watch it.
Yeah.
Just because it's a great movie. But I think he'll connect to it.
So for my next puzzle piece, we got a little bit of magical realism, but also, so I think that this movie, it's a combination of, in a very, very real way, capturing San Francisco while also capturing this magical version of San Francisco.
Okay.
And this isn't a movie, but a television show, Atlanta. I feel it also does that kind of thing where it's like you're getting the real Atlanta, and then you're getting this just just fantastical version of Atlanta, you know, and you're getting heightened versions of all the things that make Atlanta the city that it is, and the uniqueness of that city, and just raising them all up a little bit.
Yeah.
But sprinkled into a very real portrayal of the city. And you know, also just incredible show, which, by the way, was just picked up for 2 more seasons. So that's awesome.
All right. It is a great show.
Yeah.
I don't know enough about it, that, you know, as much as I'd like to, but I've seen some of it, and it's quite good.
Yeah.
Really good. But yeah, no, I agree. And I think that one of the key things is that the name of the show is Atlanta.
Uh-huh.
When you name something like a place like that, you know what I mean? It's kind of like, it reminds me of the movie Lincoln, where like it's only about that small portion of his life.
Right.
But they chose that because they felt it was representative of the full man.
Right.
I remember reading some like IMDb comments, which is always the worst thing you could ever do for anything. But it was like, this isn't Lincoln's life. This is like 2 weeks of his life. Like freaking out. I was like, what is wrong with you? Like, could you not understand what they were going for? Like, they just wanted a traditional biopic. Like, it blew my mind. You know what I mean? I was like, just go watch Bohemian Rhapsody and leave me the fuck alone. And listen, you know me, I'm not the biggest Spielberg apologist in the world. I think he's terrible most of the time. But Lincoln blew my mind. I mean, it's a phenomenal movie. But anyway, so that's the thing. That's kind of an artistic choice where a small fraction is representative of the whole. Yeah. It kind of reminds me of, this is not a puzzle piece, but and I'll just spend a second on it, but it reminds me of Synecdoche, New York. Because the word Synecdoche really means that a small part is representative of the whole, or the whole is representative of a small part. Yeah. And so, of course, it's a play on words for the real city in New York. And so it's kind of a genius name, in addition to being a genius in a lot of other ways. Yeah. But I think Last Black Man and the show like Atlanta is about that. It's like these individuals are representative of an idea. They're representative of a bigger thing, and that's where I think Last Black Man is actually quote unquote about San Francisco. Sure, exactly. It's about this place. And it has all the nice little juicy details. Like, I know this has been talked about the most because it's like shocking in a way, but there's like the naked scene, the guy who walks up to the bus stop and he's totally naked, and they just don't pay attention to that. And it's one of those things that, again, artistic flourish, but it really works because that's San Francisco. Right. I have a really funny story. And it's not funny; it's sad, but it also made me laugh. So that's like it should be a movie by A24. Yeah. So I was in San Francisco and I was walking down the wharf, and there was a homeless guy with a plant, like a potted plant, and it was in a baby stroller. And he was kind of very dirty. He looked like he'd been homeless for a long time, was not doing well. And that's what's sad about it. And there's all these people, all these tourists standing around in a circle, like a almost a full circle around this guy. And as I'm walking by, some guy goes, "Why do you have a plant in a baby carriage?" And in a really surprising moment of reality, the homeless guy goes, "I don't know, man." And I was like, you know what? That's amazing. That's an amazing moment. Good answer. This guy doesn't fucking know what's going on. And there was like, he's probably mentally ill, handicapped, in need of help in some way, shape, or form. And he's being looked at like an animal in a cage, or like he's an attraction. And it is admittedly weird, and we're all curious. We all want to see the head rolling down the street. I understand that side of it too. Sure. But for him just to have all of that artifice fall off, he's like, I don't know. Yeah. I don't know why I have it. It was kind of profound. Yeah. And I wish this film, Last Black Man, was being made, because I would have written to them and said, put that in there. Yeah. Because I think it would have actually fit beautifully.
I got a character for you.
Yeah. And I don't know if they would have listened, but that's a gem. I don't know why I have this. I don't know what's going on.
Well, what do you got for your next puzzle piece?
So the next one, I'm going to mention 2 movies because I think they're specifically about it, similar, but about a filmmaker named Charles Burnett. And the films are Killer of Sheep and To Sleep with Anger. And To Sleep with Anger actually stars Danny Glover, who has a really wonderful turn in The Last Black Man of San Francisco. Such a role of humility. Yeah. A minor role, but a poignant one, a powerful one, playing the blind grandfather of one of the other main characters in the film. And probably got part of the reason the film probably got made, as I guess Plan B really saved the day on this film. Sure. But I think Danny Glover brought such a class to it and a prestige to it because he's just such a great actor.
Sure.
Especially now because he's taken on these smaller movies, and he's doing some really great work.
He has been doing a lot lately.
Yeah, he's great. He's great. And the thing about Charles Burnett is that he is one of the real, true, independent black filmmakers. Killer of Sheep was like a student film that he used all this copyrighted music, and it never got proper distribution because they couldn't afford the soundtrack. But it became like bootlegged, and it just went around and around and got him work, and he started a film career. And then only years later was it actually like released and distributed when I believe just like an art society, art grant or something along those lines put the money up to actually get the rights to the soundtrack. And it's about a little place in Los Angeles, and the main character Stan is a slaughterhouse employee, and he just lives this kind of dismal life in this. And he just ponders the reality of his life ever getting better. And it kind of has this bleakness about it. It's this, lo-fi, black and white, shot on probably a 16 millimeter film.
Yeah.
But it has a lot in common about being about a place and a time, being about a feeling and a people confronting their disadvantages that are citywide, statewide, countrywide. All of that kind of comes in it. And there's a fire to Charles Burnett and a boldness to him that I think this film shares. They're very poetic. They're very beautiful, but in their more harsh depictions of reality. So I think that Charles Burnett's films, those two in particular, probably had a great influence.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm not familiar with either of those movies.
They're great.
Yeah.
Both great.
Sounds like it.
I think To Sleep with Anger was actually just re-released by Criterion.
Oh, really?
So it made it a little bit more available. I bought Killer of Sheep a long time ago when it was first released on DVD. That they finally released it from some small distribution company, so I picked up a copy because I had only seen it in theaters. Like they would tour it around and stuff. But I'd seen it once before in Los Angeles. And I became an immediate fan and was blown away by it. It's kind of it's rough around the edges. It's not like a particularly masterfully crafted film the way that Last Black Man is for a debut. And that's the thing is I don't know much about the filmmakers. I know it's their first major feature film, but I assume that the cinematographer is a veteran because the cinematography was so brilliant that there had to be some type of experience or wisdom behind it is my guess.
You would think, yeah.
I could totally be wrong. But I think that for a first time out, they must have had some really wonderful help. Yeah. Which excites me because for my first feature film that I'm currently developing, I have these heavyweight legends doing the movie. Jim Planette as a gaffer, E.T. and Young Frankenstein and Fisher King and then Douglas Milsome, Full Metal Jacket, Lonesome Dove. I mean, these are people that I admire, that I am ready to fuck up around because they're a really nice safety net. And they can help me channel my voice and channel my vision into their experience. For sure. So when I looked at this movie, I thought these guys must be melting with passion and excitement, and they must have some like keeping them getting this thing made. I could be totally wrong, but that was just my impression of it.
Right on. Well, I'm going to go with my next puzzle piece, and this is one I just thought of this morning, actually, and there's probably a better version of this puzzle piece, so let me just put that right out there, right up front. But I was thinking about the fact that Jimmie Fails, the actor who plays Jimmie, also wrote this based on his own life. And it just being this kind of weird, heightened version of his own life, I thought of Larry David and Curb Your Enthusiasm. Yeah. I mean, he's surrounded by all these, just like kind of colorful characters, and it is a version of what he goes through, or what he's gone through, what his life has been, and I'm not quite sure how much of it is based on his life. So I mean, it might not really be that much, but from what I understand, it's he really did have this house that meant so much to him and whatnot, and so just that using your own life and then kind of just heightening it, it just
that's a great one.
Made me think of that.
Yeah, I don't know if I misread this or if I'm misremembering, but is the house the real house?
I think it is.
I think it is too.
I think I did hear that.
Which, I mean, if I had that house, I would fight for it too.
Seriously, right?
I would squat in it.
Howl all night in it. You know?
Exactly. I'd paint the windowsill. I would do whatever. That's a beautiful house.
Would you pick the kitchen to sleep in?
No.
Or was it a dining room, actually?
A dining room.
Yeah.
I would definitely yell to claim my ownership.
Nice.
I would scream
Yeah.
about it. I'd be naked a lot more than the characters were.
That's true.
In this film.
I could vouch for that.
Yeah, I'd be nude almost instantaneously. Before the other family moved out. I think that'd be a key motivating factor for them to leave, would be my nude body.
So you're basically all the characters wrapped in one in this movie.
Yes.
So, yeah.
That's one other reason I connect with it, is that I'm just all of them. But with less clothes.
Yes.
It's a beautiful movie. And the house is a character, almost the same way that the city is.
Mm-hmm.
Again, these all play such a part in it. That's why one of the reasons why the beautiful cinematography works so well and isn't kind of showy is that it's featuring the house so wonderfully.
Yeah.
And it's it's like, to me, it reminded me of like John Ford shooting Monument Valley in The Searchers. It's like it was supposed to take place in Texas, and they shot in Arizona, and they look nothing alike. I mean, it's the unreality of The Searchers is astounding, that they used Monument Valley for like rural Texas. But it doesn't matter. That's because what we remember are those shots. And so many of those shots were done in medium or wide while John Wayne's walking around, because that's the scenery is a character.
Right.
And so I feel like, that Last Black Man wisely was artful in its cinematography, because it sucked you into the environment.
Absolutely. Those wide shots of him skateboarding down the hill.
Yeah. I know.
I mean, that's going to stick with us.
I love that the skateboarding's making such a comeback. It's like, we had Spike Jonze, who was doing music videos and stuff, and was a skateboarder, and then we get some of the best films of last century and so far this century. And now we have these skateboard kids from San Francisco knocking it out of the park with the best movie of the year. I love it.
Seriously.
Makes me feel good, because when I was a kid, I was a skateboarder. I never had the body for it. I think I've landed 3 ollies in my entire life. And I broke my collarbone twice going down my own driveway. So that gives you an idea of how good of a skateboarder I was. But I could actually ride really well. I was really coordinated and just riding. Could never do tricks. And so I wanted to make a film. I wanted to make a sketch comedy kind of inspired by like Kids in the Hall. And none of my friends wanted to do it. They were all skateboard kids. Yeah. So they convinced me to just make a skate video. And so that was like my first film on an old, cassette camcorder. Yeah. And I squeezed in little weird skits and stuff, but for the most part it was a skate video. So it's kind of cool. It made me feel like, okay, well my roots aren't that far from these guys either. Like I was watching Ingmar Bergman as a little kid in 2001: A Space Odyssey, but then I'd go out and skateboard. So I think that kind of weird clash of styles and cultures is kind of where I come from as well. Yeah. So it was like that was cool. That was cool to see.
Yeah. Right on. What do you got for your next puzzle piece?
I'm going to say, I'm going to do a non-movie.
Okay.
And I'm going to say the work of James Baldwin. James Baldwin is pretty hot right now because another thing like the director of Moonlight, Barry Jenkins, he did If Beale Street Could Talk. Yep. And I think I noticed the second time I saw Last Black Man is there's a small picture of James Baldwin in the house of the second character. And the playwright aspect of it and the literary aspect of it, but they talk about Langston Hughes. They talk about Charles Dickens, but how the characters are Philistines. I particularly liked that insult about the family that moved out of that house and how they left behind this great literature. So I feel like James Baldwin permeates this film. I'm a big fan of James Baldwin. Another Country and Giovanni's Room, and I've read a lot of his work. And there's always this quiet beauty, this very profound and intense voice, and I can feel the filmmakers kind of channeling that in this. Yeah. I think Jimmie Fails himself is such a powerful performer, and that's his first major performance, and I think that he really carries it well. Yeah. And I think James Baldwin just had the soul of Baldwin is like all over this thing. Yeah. So really nice.
Right on. I like it. Absolutely. I think, you mentioned Moonlight and then, also coming off of Barry Jenkins' other film. I mean, obviously he's in the in the culture right now.
Yeah, he's
Very
in
big.
vogue,
Yeah.
which is great. It's like James Baldwin. One of course, this is not the first time this has happened to an African American or black artist where they have done work as good or better of any substantial white artist, and they just are not as mainstream. They're just buried.
Absolutely.
And I found him. When I was young, I was really, still am really into Lou Reed. And it's such a huge honor, for me to get to know Lou a little bit before he passed away, and because he was just like a major life-changing force for me.
Yeah.
But he led me into William S. Burroughs. He led me, which then got me into the Beats, and that got me into that era of 1960s Americana writing. And then I found James Baldwin, and that was, it's like what's great about being kind of like someone showing you something cool is that it opens up this rabbit hole of things that you find, and you feel like you're part of this cool club. I think I mentioned that before in an earlier episode about like finding Tom Waits.
Yeah,
but it's like you feel like you're exclusively in this cool person club, and nothing could be further from the truth. As soon as you find out who Tom Waits is, you hear him in car commercials and stuff. He's out. These people are everywhere.
Yeah.
But there's something about finding great art and finding something that's kind of been hidden or something old, even.
Yeah.
For nostalgic people like myself, that it's just more special.
Yeah.
So when I think about the fingerprints of James Baldwin over a movie is cool and fresh and now, and I know these are all sound like super like with their hula hoops, but like this, when I think about Last Black Man, it's like now, it's right this second, it's pulsing, it's it's important, it's those things, and yet you can still feel the influence of someone like James Baldwin. It's just nice. It makes it feel as special as when I first picked up Giovanni's Room.
Right on. Well, I only got one more.
Okay.
And this one's more of like one of those buckets we sometimes do with like a few movies in one. It's also more of like an anti-puzzle piece. It's kind of like, where it's like the opposite of this. Like they looked at this and did something completely different. But it's movies like Friday, Boys in the Hood, and like movies like that. These hood movies of like the 90s. I feel like the crew that hangs out on the corner really plays with your expectations. They know you've seen those movies,
right? And
they know that in the back of your mind you're thinking, is something like that, is somebody going to get shot, is but it never goes to that, really. I mean, it's obviously somebody does, but it's it doesn't go into violence or anything like that.
It subverts your expectation dramatically.
Absolutely.
The crying into Jimmie's, when they're about to square off.
Yes.
And then he cries.
Yes.
Oh my God.
Yeah. It's fantastic.
It's one of those things that, in a lesser movie, you'd roll your eyes.
Yeah.
But in a movie of this kind of gravity and power, it works.
Yeah, absolutely. It really, really subverts your expectations. And I think it has that to play off of, it really does. And those movies are movies that we've all seen, what I mean, growing up. And so I think that it works as a, like I said, like an anti-puzzle piece almost.
I agree. And it's funny, this is kind of delicate territory because I'm speaking as an outsider.
Sure.
But, it's you listen to the Kendrick Lamar album Damn, and there's that song DNA, and they use like a clip from the news where it's like, you hear some white newscaster saying like, this is why I think that rap music is actually more dangerous for than racism in America today. And you're like, holy shit, like someone went on television and said that,
right?
Like you're like, and that's the thing, is like the way that they're so blatant with that kind of ignorance that they must think they're justified. This isn't ignorance that they whisper to their friends.
Right.
This is stuff they're going to go on TV and make a proclamation.
Yeah.
So that they're just like, they're so deep in the ignorance that it's just, they're so far gone. But like, what's interesting is that so much of my experience with Black culture has been through art. I mean, obviously, the only reason why we have art and culture in this country is because of Black people. Our music comes from field haulers, and that turns into blues and turns into jazz, and our Mozart is Louis Armstrong. We've had nothing. There's nothing. Besides that, so we owe everything to that, especially creatively. But I don't know a lot about growing up in the hood. I have no idea. Yeah. So Boys in the Hood was a revelation to me.
Right.
Again, it's like I mentioned earlier, it's a gateway into ultimate understanding and empathy. Even though movies intrinsically are reductive,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because you can only make a movie about these characters, and those characters are not representative of all black people in all the hoods in all the world.
Yeah.
And the art is always reductive. It's always going to be. I guess it's always about degrees of being reductive.
Yeah.
And so what was interesting, particularly about Last Black Man, is that it really, with a lot of courage, I think, tackled the issue of not only toxic masculinity,
Mm-hmm.
but how that is rampant within the African American male community.
Sure.
Now, again, that's coming from an outsider. I don't
Mhm.
know the nuance of that, but
Yeah.
I do know that, I guess, as far as I do know, it's more prevalent.
Yeah.
Now, of course, there's different shades of that, and there's white bros. They're just as monstrous. And they're just as terrible. But the thing is, I feel like, even this is gonna sound super silly, but I was watching Scrubs, and Turk has a hard time telling his feelings to JD, his oldest and bestest friend. There's something almost like it's almost easier for a young African American person to hide within themselves and have this bravado as a mask.
Yeah.
So where like I was just this dopey, chubby white kid that would listen to Hall & Oates and have Lou Reed and David Bowie kissing on my binder, and like people were like, "Are you gay?" And I was like, "Yep." And I'm not. I wasn't. And I just said it because I didn't care. There was no consequence.
Right.
I was allowed to be artsy. I was allowed to wear a corduroy jacket like a fucking, teacher at UC Santa Barbara with, when I was 14 years old. No one gave a shit. No one gave a shit. I could do that. I had that freedom. And I remember I have a wonderful friend named Terrell, who's a middle-aged African-American artist, great photographer. And I was telling him about all these films that he needs to see. And he's like, "Oh, I've never seen Casablanca." If I was a kid and growing up in Texas in my African-American community, and I told him I wanted to watch an old movie, I would have had my ass kicked.
Right.
There's something about that, like an anti-intellectual feeling that I think is also closely woven with toxic masculinity.
Absolutely.
There's not a lot of scholars within that community, white or black or Mexican or Chinese or whatever it is. Those aren't threads that often intermingle.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, again, just speaking from an outsider, I've seen that kind of toxic masculinity, and so much of it is about. I mean, you listen to a lot of the rap music, and it's just about like, "Hey, I might have a Ferrari now, but I'm still tough." That's like a lot of the music.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I'm successful, but I'm still hard.
Yeah.
And so I feel like, I've never thought about if people thought I was tough or not. It never even occurred to me.
Right.
And so that's
and we didn't have to.
No, that's speaking totally from privilege.
Yeah. No.
That's a survival mechanism.
Yeah.
Like my sweet friend who said he couldn't watch fucking Casablanca because he was going to get his ass kicked. I was like, well, that's so foreign to me. And all I have is empathy and sadness.
Yeah.
Not that he needs my pity. He's doing just fine.
Sure.
He's a great artist. But that's the thing is these are just layered, complex subjects.
Yeah.
So when I actually found out that the director of the film was white, I was like, whoa, it blew my mind because I was like, this is a black dude.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I was excited because like all I want to do is see more black cinema.
Yeah.
And I seek it out. I seek out female cinema just to be exposed, just to have a different palette. And one of the things I'll touch on before we move on is that like I can't tell you how wonderful it is. And this is maybe sounding crazy as some white dude, but I really love seeing these beautiful black faces in the big screen.
Sure.
Seeing like if Beale Street Could Talk, it was 97% African American. We only had the one friendly Jewish guy played by Dave Franco.
Yeah.
Let us all know that Jews and blacks are cool. Thankfully. Or we get the wise white Canadian like Brad Pitt in 12 Years a Slave. He's always like the wise white dude
who produced the movie.
So exactly. Yeah. He should stop taking those roles. He's like, they do what still? He's like raking with his funny beard. No, but yeah, it's just when I found out that he was a white director, I thought this guy has a lot of courage to go into those murky territories. I was to finish my thought in a nutshell that it's beautiful to see these people because I just don't see enough black people. They're not given enough substantial roles, and they're just a gorgeous, different thing. They're just different, and that's part of what makes them beautiful and interesting to look at. If Beale Street Could Talk has all these wonderful close-ups of these loving eyes and these loving people. And I just don't, I don't see that. I see so many movies. I've watched so many movies. That just something different is so rewarding.
Yeah.
And the fact that it's also lifting this culture up and showing us something different is just all the more special.
Absolutely.
So yeah, it's just great to see these big, wonderful black faces on the screen.
Before we move on to your final puzzle pieces, because that was my last one, I just wanted to say, as a white guy, before saying that last puzzle piece, I definitely looked up whether or not it's okay to say hood movies.
Oh, and what's the verdict?
Yeah, it seems to be a word, so it seems to be a proper phrase. So.
Okay, it's just short for neighborhood.
Yeah, right. So
right? I don't know. I don't know what's right to say anymore. I said big black beautiful face. I don't even know if that's.
Well, come on, that's got to be okay.
I think it's okay. It's a compliment.
It is. It's a total compliment.
Yeah.
So, what else do you got? And then we'll wrap it up.
Okay. So I'll go through them briefly.
Sure.
One of the things I'd like to mention is Woody Allen. Kind of actually is an extension of your Larry David in a way.
I was almost going to go with Woody Allen instead of Larry David.
Okay.
Yeah.
See, I'm a big Woody fan.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about his social standing. I don't know what happened.
Sure.
I'm just talking about his films. You have to separate the artist from the man. I also like Louis Ferdinand Celine, and he was a Nazi sympathizer. So there's just, you can't like anybody.
Yeah.
You can't like anybody because all artists are just dog shit, apparently.
Yeah.
You can't like Pablo Picasso. Nobody. Nothing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So anyway, so I like Woody Allen movies.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like Blue Jasmine in particular, again, on the superficial level that it takes place in San Francisco.
Uh-huh.
But Woody has always made movies about the places as well. I mean,
Yes.
He's famously makes movies about, Manhattan, of course. But, he's been in Spain now, he's been in France now, he's been in Italy now. And every time the story has something actually to do with that place.
Mm.
And I feel like when he made Blue Jasmine, it had to do with San Francisco. And it's a very beautiful rendering of San Francisco. It's dreamy. It's, again, a little bit tweaked. Woody, in particular, likes to shoot things very warm and composed. And, so it's never really like a harsh sense of reality with him, customarily. But I could definitely see... I don't know if these guys are fans of Woody Allen in general. I can see the kind of intellectual honesty in Last Black Man. I could see that. I feel like Woody is a precursor for that.
Yeah.
No one was writing intellectual romance movies. No one was writing intelligent comedies. He came out and with this. Now especially in his later films, they're so visually beautiful and they're so confident and competent in their craftsmanship.
Yeah.
That I imagine they saw Blue Jasmine and saw their wonderful city on display.
Right.
And they went, wow, this is a beautiful place. Because sometimes when it's right in front of you, you don't see it. So I'm just totally guessing, but maybe they were bored with it and they want to leave somewhere maybe, and they saw that film and they went, oh wait, we're in a gold mine.
He also deals with a little of that magical realism. So.
Always.
Yeah.
He always does. Yeah. Blue Jasmine is harshly real about real things.
Mm-hmm.
He made a movie called Magic in the Moonlight, and it's totally a farce. He goes there. But Blue Jasmine is really brutal.
Oh, yeah.
It's kind of a rehash of Streetcar Named Desire, but with a kind of great Woody twist.
Mm-hmm.
But San Francisco is so on display in that film that if they didn't particularly love that movie for any reason, I bet you they were just happy that San Francisco was featured in such a beautiful, warm way.
Seeing their city.
Yeah, and I can that's when I see things, like when something horrible happens in Ohio, which happens all the time, and you're like, oh man, why did that happen in my state?
Yeah,
which is so stupid. Why does it happen anywhere? I have no particular attachment to Ohio anymore. It doesn't mean anything to me. But for some reason, you have those thoughts. You get very protective of where you are, where you're from, anyway. And I feel like I sense Woody all over the movie. And that's the thing, is that might be subliminal because the guy's made a movie every year for 50 years and he's in our culture. If you're a film person, he's in the culture.
Sure. And
what's funny about Woody too is that he's so around that I think he's underappreciated as an artist. People write him off as like, oh, he's just, what are you doing his Woody thing? He's making another Woody Allen movie. And there's a shred of truth to that. And he does repeat himself, but he finds a way to reinvent it in my eyes. And I don't want to be a Woody apologist, but I'd rather see a bad Woody Allen movie than most other things out there. And so, consciously or not, I feel like Last Black Man owes a lot to the more mature, nuanced, beautiful, sentimental movies about a town, because Woody has mastered that.
Absolutely.
So yeah, Blue Jasmine in particular, but all Woody. Then I'm going to say Ghost World.
I was thinking about that.
Yeah?
As far as like the buddy aspect, I was thinking like that's
a lot, I think.
Yeah, and I'd like to hear what other ways, but that was the way that I was almost thinking about using it as a puzzle piece, because I feel like as far as the friendship is concerned, that's kind of the closest friendship I was thinking of.
Yeah, the thing is, they just it's kind of hard to put into words. Is that they just kind of feel the same, like how they're shot, the music. how they're the light choices, like center characters, the buddy aspect of it, the kind of dry comedy, the layers of surrealism. They all it all kind of fits. And then Thora Birch popped up.
Sure.
And I was like, holy shit. Because I mean,
Yeah.
I was thinking about Ghost World as I was watching it the first time, and then she has her cameo, and I was like, oh yeah.
Yeah.
There's something about Ghost World. Terry Zwigoff is a wonderful filmmaker. He doesn't make enough movies. I'm a huge fan of Crumb, and I watch that like once a year with my brother. Like we have a weird Crumb thing.
Everyone check out the Crumb episode of Awesome Movie Year that just came out.
Oh, I gave you an opportunity to plug something. There you go. That's all I'm good for. But yeah, there's kind of this. Like I've watched Ghost World a lot. I have a great little story about that. I found out that you can rent movies for free from the library when I was young. That was like a loophole.
Yeah.
Because I was spending a lot of my parents' money as a kid, and they would it was every day. It was like, can I go to Can I go to Blockbuster? Can I go to Hollywood Video? And like sometimes they said yes, most of the time they said no, and I was really getting tired of it. So I found out that you can go to the library and rent movies. And so I started renting every movie I could possibly get from the library, and I got Ghost World. I just found it, and I rented it, and I got it. And I watched it, and I was floored by it. But I only experienced it on its surface, and there's so much more there.
Yeah.
The pants on the road. That's an expressionistic, funny thing. Seymour, the character by Steve Buscemi, ends up wearing those jeans, and then they're gone off the sidewalk. Or the out of the bus that's out of commission, and the guy sits on the bus. He's always waiting for it, and the bus finally comes. These are all these big, wonderful, surrealistic gestures.
I gotta watch that again. It's been a while. Yeah.
It's funny because it says the bus says not in service on the bench, but the guy sits in the center of it, and it just says notice. It's layered, man. It's layered.
It's great.
It's a really great film. And there's something about this seeming normality of the movie. Like what I like about Ghost World is kind of like about punks, right? It's about this punky subculture.
Yeah.
To where Last Black Man's about this skater culture.
Yeah.
Never really about it, but just that's who they are.
Right.
That's how they're being represented. And so it's about these kind of like normal things that you don't necessarily associate with poetic filmmaking, and yet we kind of dig in and find something more abstract and more poetic about it. Yeah. And there's just kind of a feeling about those movies that are similar, and that the friends don't end up together. Yeah. And that's another thing I felt was similar. But yeah, again, I don't know if it's conscious or not, but I could definitely see a lot of parallels between Ghost World and this.
Absolutely. Yeah, I almost had it on my list.
There you go. It's a great film. I love Ghost World. Yeah. And I think there's only one more, which is George Washington. Okay. George Washington is a great little movie. Very low budget. Was one of those lightning in a bottle movies. I think that's part of the reason why it's connected to it in my eyes, is that it has every reason not to succeed, and because it has such a little budget and not that much fanfare, and yet it has a lot of powerful elements to it that make it rise to the top. Mm-hmm. It's kind of it kind of goes back to that Terrence Malick thing. I think George Washington owes a lot to the Terrence Malick floaty, ethereal, kind of sparse story, poetic, voiceovery vibe. And not that Last Black Man has all of those things, but they just share certain things about it. And it's about, more about the people and the place than like a concrete plot. Mm-hmm. So I think that has a lot to do. Kind of a modern vibe with that Terry Malick approach. And I think that Last Black Man kind of has that feel too. So those are all of them. Those are all my puzzle pieces.
Awesome. Well, let's do the finished puzzle, and then we'll get in any closing thoughts.
Okay.
So for The Last Black Man in San Francisco, we've got Moonlight, Blind Spotting, The Royal Tenenbaums, The Florida Project, Do the Right Thing, Paris, Texas, Atlanta, Killer of Sheep, To Sleep with Anger, Curb Your Enthusiasm, the work of James Baldwin, Hood movies like Friday, Boys in the Hood, Menace to Society, Woody Allen movies like Blue Jasmine, Ghost World, and George Washington. What do you got for...
It's a good puzzle.
It's a great. I
love
puzzle.
all of those things so much. How could I not love The Last Black Man in San Francisco?
Seriously. It's so true. I'm going to actually go first with closing thoughts here, because one other thing I wanted to mention, and you were kind of like touching on it a little bit when talking about some of the like toxic masculinity themes and stuff like that in the movie. But one of the things I found so interesting about this movie is how you really don't know for practically the whole runtime really is what exactly the relation is between these two guys, the two main characters, whether or not they're friends or even lovers possibly, or relatives or whatever. I just thought that was so interesting. And, especially in that that community. You
Yeah.
know, you don't really see that kind of a friendship,
No.
displayed, and it's like such a close friendship, and so I don't know, just so unique in film. I haven't really seen anything like that before.
Yeah, and the black artist is
Mm,
an undershown character. We have the hip hop artist.
sure.
We have that's big, but we don't have the James Baldwin figure.
Yeah.
We really don't have that very often. And as far as I'm concerned, every person, no matter what skin color you are, you're allowed to like whatever you want to like.
Sure. Sure.
And to have a playwright, to have someone play that role, I think, and that's the thing is like I've heard another thing, not to harp on my friend Terrell, but he mentioned that like if you got into that stuff, not only were you looked down upon for XYZ reason, but it was also because you were assuming the white culture.
Right. Right.
You were becoming, the Uncle Tom
Yeah.
thing,
Yeah.
which is such a weird, like, how do you navigate that? Like,
Yeah.
I just can't imagine that navigating that kind of like judgment. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? That like just because you read a book, even if it's written by a black man, that it's like somehow that he's sold out to the white man. And
Right.
it's scary. I mean, I can't even imagine how frustrating that is.
Bizarre.
And yeah, how just just scary that is.
Yeah. Yeah.
But when I look at those characters in Last Black Man, I do not see white people. I do not see, whiteified black characters. There's
Yeah.
that one really subtle but wonderful part when he answers the door in his normal clothing. His dad sees him, and he's like, "What are you doing dressed like a white boy?"
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then I don't know. I mean, that's the thing is that was something we didn't even talk about. This movie keeps opening itself up. There's layer after layer after layer of this wonderful movie. But like, yeah, he changes his outfit and puts on different glasses to look more black.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know what the filmmakers think. I don't know if skateboarding is considered more white than black. Like,
Mhm.
I'm coming from a total place of privilege that I don't have to think about those things, that I don't really know the nuance of those things. I don't know what's white and what isn't.
Right.
I have a very simplistic view of quote unquote what's black. You know what I mean? And
Sure.
I want a nuance. I want that to be more nuanced. And so, but as totally as a subjective viewer, when I look at those characters, I saw them in the tradition of a Baldwin. I saw them in the tradition of a Langston Hughes.
Mm.
And these are people that are founders of American art, not American white art, not American black art. I mean, white people stole rock and roll from
Right.
the black man. And so, like, this is all intertwined. The more we try to separate things, the more we realize how many connective pieces of tissue there are, how many strings are actually attached, because it's all been morphed into one.
Yeah.
But never for a second did it dawn on me, and this may be different for an African-American audience member, but when I looked at those characters, I wasn't like, man, they're acting white.
Right.
It only hit me when the dad was like, why are you dressed like a white boy?
Yeah.
And I was like, holy shit. Like, it really it kind of struck me.
Right.
Because they just throw it away. There's not like a big subplot about that.
Right.
And just to kind of touch on what you were saying, this movie is confident enough to not give us all the details.
Yeah.
That's the thing is this movie would be challenging maybe to the average moviegoer because they're accustomed to every piece of information being given to them on
Sure.
a silver platter.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this movie and a lot of other movies, and now we're getting to this new era of indie, is that we're more confident taking a risk.
Yeah.
And that's why the Paris, Texas analogy or comparison is good, because that movie hooked us with a mystery.
Mm.
And it didn't give us all that information, and that's what this film did. And that's becoming more that people are realizing that if you can earn a good mystery, that you can take people anywhere.
That's
And
interesting.
you don't need
yeah.
all those, okay, this is what this is, and this is what their relationship is. Is that even about that? Are we wasting crucial minutes of this movie to explain something with poor clunky exposition? And so yeah, I mean this is a movie made by confident people that you would think is their 5th, 10th, 15th movie.
Right. Right.
But they showed up ready to play. They showed up with a stellar debut, and I was floored. I was really floored by it from the get-go, and then even more so after seeing it again. And it's rare. It's a rare movie for me.
Well, it's going to be on VOD when this goes up, but I noticed it's still actually at like 1 or 2 theaters.
Village
so
Square
who
in
knows?
Vegas.
Maybe you could still see it in the theater. when
Go
this
see
thing
it.
goes up.
I'm contemplating. I feel bad because I want to go see other things, but I want to go back and see it again.
Yeah, I this and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood are the two that are out in theaters that I've seen already that I'd love to try to catch one more time. So see what happens.
Exactly. It's funny. There's a couple movies every now and again. There's a movie that comes out. It's usually like one movie a year.
Yeah.
that I really get hooked on. A couple of years ago, it was Good Time with Robert Pattinson. That was like the movie of the year for me.
Yeah.
Before that, it was 127 Hours. That was a movie that I was like, oh my god, people need to see this, and I take people to go see it, and I just bring them again. I bring again and again and again, and so I mean, this is one of those movies that anyone that will go with me, I'm going to take them.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, I think that does. I'm glad we got to do this episode. Very, very happy we got to do it, and I'm glad you loved the movie so much. What do you? What have you seen lately that you'd like to recommend?
Okay. So amazingly, I am shocked to say this, but Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Oh, there you go.
So I'm not the biggest Tarantino fan. I think he's does a lot of stupid shit. But man, that's a pretty good movie. I have problems with it. It's not perfect, but it's the most nuanced movie he's ever made. It's the most about things that he's ever made. It's not a revenge story only. It's about other actual things.
Yeah.
I think it's his most mature and beautiful and funny little movie, and it's different. That's the thing is like I compared to me, he's like if Wolfgang Puck only made mac and cheese. That's what he's usually like to me.
Yeah.
He's a really talented guy, but
really fucking good mac and cheese.
Yeah,
but
it's good mac and cheese, but it's just fucking mac and cheese.
Right.
It's like one level of what he could actually do, and it's boring. I mean, I can only eat so much good mac and cheese until I want to throw up. I want something different. I like pizza. I don't want to eat pizza every night.
Yeah,
and that's what this guy does for me. Yeah. And then I'm watching this movie, and I'm like, oh my god, I don't know what to expect. Right, that's the first time. Maybe ever in his career that I felt that way.
I'll say it actually made it hard to rank when we did our ranking special, because it's like, where does that fall in a career that this is the most different thing he's done?
Yeah. Listen, I like Pulp Fiction and everything. That's a great movie and everything. But the only real movie that ever actually spoke to me that I connected with was Jackie Brown. Jackie Brown is a masterpiece, and I don't care what Quentin Tarantino does. He can rewrite American slavery and the Holocaust and things that I think are disgusting and idiotic and like not earned at all. But he made Jackie Brown, so that's okay. So he's great. He's a great filmmaker. I know that he has it in him. And to me, I feel like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is. Not as good as Jackie Brown, but his best since Jackie Brown. Yeah, and I don't think he'll ever eclipse Jackie Brown. It's just a great movie. But that was really good. Because Last Black Man is still in theaters. Obviously, that's an obvious one. Don't do this podcast, but go see it for the love of God.
Yes.
The Farewell, I'm actually really taken with. I think it was a wonderful movie. Something different for A24, which is like, okay, they're doing different stuff as well. That's it for now.
That works.
Yeah, those are the ones.
Absolutely. Well, what do you got to plug?
Oh, same old shit. So I'm making a feature film, of course, with the support of the Kubrick family, which is such a deep honor. Mrs. Christiane Kubrick, Stanley's widow, has given me her original paintings that were featured in Eyes Wide Shut, A Clockwork Orange, to be in my film. It's such an immense honor. So we're currently developing that movie and getting it out there and attaching talent and trying to find financing. So that's extremely exciting. I created a TV show called The Idiot with a dear friend of mine named Dylan Gallagher, who's one of the writers on Marvel and Netflix's Daredevil. So we've been pushing that and attaching wonderful talent. We just got Royce Johnson, the fantastic actor that had a reoccurring character, Detective Mahoney on The Punisher and Daredevil and Jessica Jones. And we got the great Richard Portnow of The Sopranos and a bunch of million things that guy was in. So The Idiot and Madame X are my major things right now. They're probably still a long ways away. We're getting the pieces together, putting our puzzle pieces together. Wink, wink. Thank you. But those are the big ones. And I'm also just trying to always be creative and see movies and put out my thoughts and feelings on my social media pages about those things and share my love of movies. So that's why, again, I appreciate you having me on and let me pontificate.
Absolutely. Well, hey, this is great, and let's not wait so long before the next time.
I know. I wanted to give your viewers or your listeners a break a little. I was like, my special brand of getting up on my soapbox. I was like, they need a sec.
Yeah.
They need to take a minute. But no, thank you again. I appreciate it.
Hey, I'm Josh Bell.
I'm Jason Harris. Hey, Josh, we're friends in real life, but we're also co-hosts on this new podcast called
Awesome Movie Year, where we take a look back at an awesome year for movies and do a deep dive looking at movies including the Best Picture winner, the biggest movie at the box office, future cult classics, and more.
including the biggest flop. And this season, we're doing 1994. You can find us wherever you get your podcasts. That could be Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or Spotify. We're all over the web as well at Awesome Movie Year on all the socials and awesomemovieyear.com. So please like us, subscribe, and if you do like us, give us a 5-star rating because we love you.
All right, I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Kris Krainock about The Last Black Man in San Francisco. If you haven't seen the movie yet, please do seek it out. It's out now on VOD. It'll be out on Blu-ray this month as well, and it is absolutely something worth checking out. I'm hoping to watch it again soon, actually. But yeah, great movie, and that was a fun conversation. A long one. So that does it for today. I want to remind you, as always, to please subscribe to Piecing It Together on your podcast app of choice. And you can follow us on social media at Piecing Pod. You can join our Facebook group, Popcorn and Puzzle Pieces. And if you're enjoying the show, we would love it if you rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. It really helps with getting the show seen, and we've been getting more info lately on how we're doing in the podcast charts, and it's great to see it go up in the charts and all those ways. We're going to keep doing this thing regardless, but we'd love to hear your feedback and love to see that people are out there listening. And there are a lot of people out there listening these last couple of months, and it's pretty damn awesome. So thank you, everyone that's out there. Oh, and by the way, we've got 2 new t-shirt designs. You can check those out at TeePublic. There's a link in the show notes, or just go search for Piecing It Together on TeePublic. And we got 2 new designs that I had made. So go check those shirts out if there's a sale on, because shipping's kind of high on TeePublic. But when they do the 30% off sale, though, that's when I order my shirts. So that does it for today. Let's leave you guys with a piece of music, and then we'll be back with more Piecing It Together next week. What should I leave you guys with today? I'm pretty sure I've played this on the show before, but I think it's a good one for a movie like The Last Black Man in San Francisco. This is a track called Under the Dust from my album Head Like Fire. Enjoy it, and we will be back with more Piecing It Together next week.
and all points west.